There are places on this planet where time doesn't tick. It echoes. Where streetlights flicker not from electricity, but memory. Where walls remember laughter, screams, and the long, aching silence that came after. These aren't sets from some dystopian film or clickbait ghost stories. They're real cities, built by hope, deserted by history, and hidden in plain sight. Forgotten not by accident, but because remembering them would mean facing something uncomfortable. That no matter how mighty our buildings, how ambitious our plans, everything we build can be swallowed whole. This is the story of those places. The 20 largest abandoned cities on Earth. Cities they didn't want you to know about. And if the silence gives you chills and the ruins whisper truth, like the video and subscribe. Because some stories aren't lost, they're just waiting for someone to listen. Number 20, Kalmanskap, Namibia. If you ever want to know what happens when a town built on diamonds runs out of sparkle, Kalmanskap is your cautionary tale. Located deep in the Namib Desert, this ghost town was once the crown jewel of German colonial ambition. In the early 1900s, diamonds were literally lying on the ground. So the Germans, ever the punctual opportunists, built a little slice of Saxony in the middle of the African desert, complete with a bowling alley, ballroom, and even an ice factory. Yes, they made ice in the desert, because colonialism is nothing if not ironic. But the diamond rush didn't last. By the 1950s, richer deposits were found elsewhere, and the people of Kalmanskap vanished like a mirage. Today, sand dunes spill through the doors of once opulent homes like time itself is reclaiming the space. The wallpaper peels like old scabs, and bathtubs sit askew in sunlit ruins, waiting for an owner who will never return. What makes Kalmanskap chilling isn't just the aesthetic, though it is the stuff of cinematic Instagram dreams. It's the eerie way nature has taken back control. Wind and sand are the new residents here, slipping through every cracked window, every empty frame. Walk through Kalmanskap, and you'll find the bones of human ambition buried in the sand. It's not haunted by ghosts, not exactly. It's haunted by a question. What happens when the dream dies and everyone walks away? If Kalmanskap gave you goosebumps, hit like. Because stories like Kalmanskap aren't just history. They're warnings buried in sand, waiting to be unearthed. Number 19, Varosha, Cyprus. You've probably never heard of Varosha, and that's no accident. This seaside resort in Cyprus was once a Mediterranean playground for the rich and famous. Think Brigitte Bardot sipping cocktails and beach parties that would make Ibiza blush. It was booming. 5-star hotels, nightclubs, luxury boutiques. Then 1974 happened. Turkey invaded Cyprus, and in the chaos, the residents of Varosha fled. They thought they'd be back in a few weeks. They never returned. The Turkish military fenced it off, and for 50 years, Varosha has sat frozen in time. Clothes still hang in store windows. Cars rust under collapsing carports. Palm trees push up through swimming pools that haven't seen a human body in half a century. The tragedy of Varosha isn't just in what was lost. It's in how it was lost. Political gridlock and nationalist pride turning paradise into purgatory. It remains fenced off, guarded, a symbol of what happens when diplomacy fails and history refuses to move forward. Number 18, Hashima Island, Japan. Nicknamed Battleship Island because, from a distance, that's exactly what it looks like. Hashima is a brutalist fever dream floating in the sea off Nagasaki. At its peak in the 1950s, over 5,000 people lived here, packed tighter than sardines, working the undersea coal mines that fueled Japan's post-war industrial rise. The buildings? Concrete. The streets? Narrow. The vibe? A cyberpunk dystopia decades ahead of its time. But coal lost the energy war to petroleum, and by 1974, Hashima was abandoned in a flash. Everyone left. The ferries stopped coming. Doors were left open. Umbrellas were left by the door. The island became a mausoleum for modernity, its concrete skeleton slowly being devoured by salt, wind, and rust. You might recognize it from James Bond's Skyfall, but no CGI can match the uncanny reality. Decay hangs in the air. Trees grow on rooftops. Hallways sag. Stairs go nowhere. It's as if the entire island is slowly exhaling its last breath. Hashima isn't just a warning about resource dependence. It's a glimpse into a future where cities built on extraction collapse under the weight of their own ambition. If there's poetry in concrete, this is it. And if a Shima spoke to you in its silence, drop a comment. Tell us if it feels like a memory or a warning. Number 17, Pripyat, Ukraine. This one you know, or at least you think you do. Pripyat is the poster child of abandonment, the nuclear Cinderella that lost its slipper on April 26, 1986, the day the Chernobyl reactor exploded. The city was evacuated in a matter of hours. Residents were told they'd be gone for 3 days. Most never returned. But what makes Pripyat so unsettling isn't just the Geiger counters or the radioactive forest. It's how normal everything looks, or looked. Classrooms still have lesson plans on the chalkboards. Children's dolls lie in rotting cribs. A Ferris wheel stands in eerie defiance, as if it's still waiting for riders who've long turned to dust. This city wasn't just evacuated. It was abandoned mid-sentence. Life here ended like someone yanked the plug out of the wall. And decades later, the static still lingers. Nature has crept in, but cautiously. Even the trees seem unsure whether they're allowed to grow here. Pripyat is a haunting museum of Soviet life and death. And while tourists now arrive in hazmat suits for selfies, the real terror isn't the radiation. It's the realization that civilization is just one disaster away from becoming a footnote. Number 16, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Imagine your town catching fire and then never stopping. That's Centralia. In 1962, someone set a landfill ablaze, which accidentally ignited an underground coal seam. The fire spread silently and slowly until the very earth became uninhabitable. Streets cracked open, smoke rose from the ground, and the carbon monoxide, not exactly part of a balanced breakfast. Today, fewer than a dozen stubborn souls remain in Centralia. The post office has been closed, the zip code revoked, and the town itself swallowed by the fire beneath it, still burning after more than 60 years. What's left is surreal. Graffiti covers the highways, sidewalks lead to nowhere, and the smell? A chemical perfume of scorched earth and forgotten dreams. It feels less like a place and more like a warning label. Centralia is the kind of story that would be unbelievable if it weren't absolutely, horrifyingly true. It's also a reminder that sometimes the most destructive fires are the ones you can't see, only feel rumbling beneath your feet. If Centralia left you unsettled, drop a comment. Because some fires burn underground, and some just burn in the back of your mind. Number 15, Oradour-sur-Glane, France. If ghosts had a favorite vacation spot, it might be here. Oradour-sur-Glane is a village that France has deliberately preserved. Not restored, not rebuilt, but frozen. Exactly as it was on June 10, 1944. That's the day when Nazi SS troops rolled in and murdered 642 people in cold blood, including women and children, many of whom were locked in a church and set on fire. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't strategic. It was a massacre. Walking through Oradour is like stepping into a photograph you never wanted to take. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Every scorched building, every shattered window silently repeats the question, how could this happen? And maybe more hauntingly, could it happen again? Oradour is more than abandoned. It's sacred ground. A ghost town not because it was forgotten, but because it was remembered too hard. Number 14, Bodie, California. Gold fever makes people do weird things, like hauling an entire town into the remote Sierra Nevada just to chase glitter buried under mountains. Bodie was one of those fever dreams. In the late 1800s, it exploded into a Wild West boomtown with saloons, brothels, opium dens, and enough gunfights to make your average spaghetti western look like a Disney flick. But gold doesn't last, and neither did Bodie. By the 1940s, the last residents had bailed. What's left now is a time capsule, so perfectly preserved it's creepy. Homes still have furniture. Stores still have products on the shelves. There's dust, but it's tidy dust, as if someone meant to come back and just forgot. If America had a museum of bad decisions dressed up as opportunity, Bodie would be the first exhibit. Number 13, Gunkanjima, Battleship Island. Nope, your eyes aren't deceiving you. We're double dipping. Because while Hiroshima got its own spotlight, The lesser-known ruins that orbit its concrete empire deserve their own screen time. There's an entire archipelago of dead industry around Nagasaki. These were auxiliary towns, workstations, offshoots. Think of them like the suburbs of coal-fueled capitalism. These satellite ruins are the B-sides to Japan's industrial mixtape. Less glamorous but raw, intimate, and weirdly touching. You find children's shoes in hallways, wedding photos curled in broken drawers, and vending machines long since rusted into silence. It's easy to overlook these places because they're not the stars of the apocalypse. But walk through them and you realize sometimes the supporting cast tells the better story. Number 12. Krakow, Italy. Perched like a medieval mirage on a cliffside in southern Italy, Krakow is the kind of town that looks photoshopped even in real life. Winding alleys, stone towers, a skyline that would make any Renaissance painter weep. But beauty doesn't make you earthquake-proof or landslide-proof. And in the 20th century, Krakow got slammed by both. The townspeople tried to stay. They reinforced walls, rerouted water, whispered prayers. But nature wasn't having it. One by one, buildings slipped, cracks spread like spiderwebs. And eventually, Krakow was declared unsafe. Everyone was evacuated, except the ghosts. They stayed. Now, the city sits in precarious silence, eternally camera-ready. Filmmakers love it, so do tourists. But underneath the Insta-ready aesthetic is a palpable sense of vertigo, not just a physical kind, but emotional. This town was loved, it was lived in, and now it teeters, quite literally, on the edge of oblivion. Krakow doesn't feel abandoned. It feels like it's holding its breath. Number 11, Agdam, Azerbaijan. Agdam was once a city of 150,000. Stadiums, mosques, government buildings. It was a bustling Azerbaijani metropolis. Then came the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in the 1990s. Armenian forces seized the city, and its population fled virtually overnight. What followed was decades of looting, shelling, and pure neglect. Today, Agdam is often called the Hiroshima of the Caucasus, except without the nuclear part, just destruction. Vast swathes of the city have collapsed into rubble. The mosque still stands, barely, but it's surrounded by a carpet of debris, overgrown streets, silence thicker than smoke. And while recent peace agreements hint at reconstruction, Agdam still sits in limbo, a ghost city caught between past war and future promise. And right now, it belongs to the weeds. Number 10, Kayaköy, Turkey. This one hurts because it wasn't abandoned for natural reasons. It was abandoned for political ones. In the early 20th century, Kayaköy was a thriving Greek Orthodox village. Homes, churches, schools, it had everything. Until the 1923 population exchange between Greece and Turkey forcibly relocated entire communities. Greek residents were expelled. Turkish Muslims sent in their place didn't stay. Kayaköy became a hollow shell of cultural amputation. The churches crumbled, the fountains ran dry, and silence replaced singing. Walking through Kayaköy today feels like trespassing on a wound that never closed. The stones remember. The doors remain open, but no one's coming home. It's not just the buildings that were abandoned. It's an entire identity, torn from its roots. And no amount of tourism or restoration can undo that kind of absence. Number 9, Wittenoom, Australia. Want a real horror story? Wittenoom was once a lively mining town in Western Australia, built around a blue-hued mineral crucidolite, also known as blue asbestos. Spoiler, asbestos is poison, and Wittenoom was basically ground zero. At its peak in the 1950s, Wittenoom had schools, shops, and a growing population. But by the 1960s, health issues were too big to ignore. Lung disease, cancer, mesothelioma. The town became synonymous with death. In 2007, the government officially wiped it from the map. What remains? 3 residents who refuse to leave, a few crumbling homes, and toxic dust so dangerous, the air itself could kill you. Seriously, visiting Wittenoom is strongly discouraged. You don't tour this place. You survive it. Wittenoom is a post-apocalyptic cautionary tale about corporate greed and governmental denial. It's not just abandoned. It was sentenced. Number 8, Kadykhin, Russia. The Soviet Union had a knack for building entire towns around singular purposes, and Kadykhin was no different. Located in Russia's far east, it existed solely to house coal miners. And like most single-industry towns, when the mine closed in the 1990s, so did life itself. In Kadykhin, the failure wasn't just industrial, it was ideological. This was supposed to be utopia by design. Instead, it became a monument to systemic collapse, a place where the Soviet dream was buried under its own weight. Number 7, Beichuan, China. Beichuan wasn't abandoned gradually. It was annihilated in minutes. In 2008, a 7.9 magnitude earthquake struck Sichuan province, and Beichuan bore the brunt. Over 80% of the town was destroyed. Thousands died. Entire families buried alive. The survivors? They left and never came back. China built new Beichuan nearby, but the original remains untouched, a tribute to the dead. The ruins are off-limits to most, but satellite images show a city entombed in rubble, frozen, preserved. This isn't just a ghost town. It's a tomb, and visiting it feels less like tourism and more like a funeral. In Beichuan, you don't just see loss. You feel it. It's carved into the hills, sunk in the riverbeds, etched in the foundations of what once was. Number 6, Fordlandia, Brazil. You might think, hey, wasn't Henry Ford a car guy? Yes, but he also tried to build a rubber utopia in the Amazon rainforest. And spoiler, it went exactly as badly as that sounds. Welcome to Fordlandia, a sprawling industrial dream turned Amazonian fever nightmare. But here's the twist. Ford forgot to factor in the rainforest. The rubber trees didn't grow properly. Workers revolted against American food and strict rules. Mosquitoes feasted on every ankle in sight. The jungle fought back, and it won. Fordlandia is proof that even billionaires can't outmuscle nature, especially when they're serving hamburgers to Brazilians in the jungle. Number 5, Sanji, Taiwan. Aliens. That's the only word that comes to mind when you first lay eyes on Sanji. Futuristic pod-shaped houses scattered along the Taiwanese coastline, like the UFOs landed and immediately ghosted. Built in the late 70s as a luxury vacation resort, Sanji was meant to be the ultimate escape for Taiwan's elite, except it never opened. Construction halted amid a string of mysterious accidents, bizarre financial mismanagement, and whispers of curses. Workers died. Investors pulled out. The pod stood empty, staring into the sea like forgotten props from a sci-fi film no one finished. For decades, these pastel-colored UFO houses became an urban explorer's dream. Strange geometry, shattered windows, moldy interiors, a dystopian beach resort where you half expect to find a lonely android sipping a coconut drink and questioning its programming. Sanji was eventually demolished in 2010, but its legend lives on in digital lore. It wasn't just abandoned, it was erased, as if the world wanted to forget it ever existed, which is exactly why it's unforgettable. Number 4, Tetuan, China. Imagine a village so overrun by nature, it looks like the earth swallowed it whole. That's Tetuan, on China's Xingshan Island, once a bustling fishing hub. It was abandoned in the 1990s as its remote location made modern life unsustainable. Electricity, education, healthcare? Too far, too hard. There are no creaking doors or broken windows here, just quiet, soft reclamation. The village is now a minor tourist attraction, especially for drone pilots and Instagram pilgrims seeking that perfect forgotten paradise shot. Tetuan isn't just a ghost town. It's a botanical fairy tale that reminds us how fast we fade when we leave. If every abandoned city tells a story, this one whispers in green. Number 3, Plymouth, Montserrat. Imagine your capital city turning into a volcano's chew toy. That's what happened to Plymouth, the former capital of the Caribbean island Montserrat. In 1995, the Soufriere Hills volcano came back to life, and by 1997, Plymouth was buried under layers of ash, mud, and pyroclastic flows. Think Pompeii, but modern and way less romantic. Today, Plymouth is still officially the capital, but no one lives there. It's a city encased in ash, frozen in mid-scream. Tourists aren't allowed inside, and even aerial photos are haunting. It's as if the Earth hit pause on a civilization halfway through dinner. In a cruel twist, the volcano didn't just destroy homes, it buried identity. The heartbeat of an island became its ghost, and the people, they had to start over, on higher ground, but forever looking back. Number 2, Canada Real, Spain. Canada Real isn't your typical ghost town. In fact, calling it abandoned is a stretch. Parts of it are still technically inhabited, but barely. This is Europe's largest illegal settlement, a 14-kilometer stretch outside Madrid that began as a squatters' community and evolved into something between a slum and a no-man's land. Electricity is scarce. Garbage piles in corners. Some sections have no running water. Others are controlled by drug cartels. In recent years, most of the population has fled due to neglect, crime, and systemic failure. What's left feels like the architectural equivalent of a broken promise. Canada Real wasn't a place people wanted to be. It was a place they had to be. Now, it's a half-living relic, a shadow city where humanity once scratched out survival and then gave up. Walls are spray-painted with frustration. Playgrounds lie twisted and rusting. The silence here isn't peaceful. It's bitter. This isn't a ghost town from the past. It's a ghost town becoming. And the scariest part is, it's happening right next to one of Europe's most glamorous capitals. Number 1, the zone of alienation, Belarus/Ukraine. You've heard of Pripyat, but zoom out. The true scale of abandonment surrounding Chernobyl is biblical. The zone of alienation spans 1,000 square miles across Belarus and Ukraine, encompassing not just cities, but entire ecosystems frozen by nuclear fallout. Dozens of villages, factories, farms, forests gone. Nature crept back in fast, but not quite right. Trees grow in twisted clusters. Wild animals roam the empty roads, some seemingly mutated, others just fearless. It's both Eden and apocalypse, a sanctuary and a scar. You walk through this place, and it's like being on another planet. Rusted amusement parks, collapsed schools, Soviet propaganda posters peeling like old skin. Everything here is abandoned mid-thought, left in such a hurry. It's as if time forgot how to function within the zone. But the eeriest thing? The zone is slowly becoming a tourist attraction. Radiation suits, guided tours, Instagram check-ins. Humanity has a funny way of turning tragedy into tourism, doesn't it? This isn't just the largest abandoned area on Earth. It's the most symbolic, a monument to what happens when science, politics, and pride all detonate in one place. So there you have it, 20 cities, towns, and villages, each one a story carved into the bones of the Earth. Some were killed by nature, others by greed, a few by accident, but all of them share the same fate. They were lived in and then left behind. You might never walk these streets, but their silence walks with you. Because abandonment isn't just about empty buildings. It's about what we leave behind when the dream dies. And if you listen close enough, even in the quietest ruins, you'll hear it. The echo of us.